lives of millions of people in Ukraine changed forever when Russian President Vladimir Putin announced the start of a special military operation. Moments later, thunderous explosions echoed throughout the capital and more cities throughout the country. Europe's biggest invasion since World War II was underway. Despite repeated warnings from the West, a full-scale invasion was unthinkable for the average Ukrainian.
We have information 4 o'clock starting invasion. I received a call from military forces, from my friends. The invasion started.
As Russian paratroopers landed at the Hostomel airfield on the outskirts of Kyiv, U.S. intelligence officials predicted the capital itself would fall within 96 hours. The main offensive was expected from the east.
We understood that it would be battle for the Donbass.
Ukrainians have criticized government leaders for not warning the public that the invasion was imminent.
We are prepared, but we tried to stop the panic in our streets.
On those streets of Kyiv, President Volodymyr Zelensky made it clear he was staying put in a brazen walkabout with members of his cabinet. Instead, he urged citizens to take up arms. And they did, by the thousands, weapons handed out to those who barely knew how to use them. Hastily erected barricades and checkpoints went up everywhere, manned by jittery volunteers with guns drawn. Day one of a war that still rages on.
In February 2022, the war started in Ukraine. The first phase, it's about staying alive and basic safety. Now it is all about how to cope with displacement. Resources are depleted. The impact of stress, of the uncertainty of the situation is pretty grave. And I think this is where HIAS comes in. The two areas we as HIAS are focusing in Romania is economic self-sufficiency and mental health.
Поэтому я очень благодарна, что вы есть, что вы заботитесь о нас здесь. Все проблемы, которые у меня есть, они решаются.
There should be global solidarity here because today you are the refugee, tomorrow it's me.
Це наш Київ.
Even as we're filming here, the air raid sirens have just started going off to show you that even when the situation is calm and feels safe, there's still danger all around here. I'm in the town of Irpin, which is just outside of Kyiv. This is one of the areas that saw very intense fighting in the early days of the war. Much of it was occupied by Russian forces who were trying to take the Ukrainian capital, but were stopped by the Ukrainian forces. As you can see, there's destruction all around me. In recent months, though, people who fled this area because of the fighting have started to come back, and they're telling us that they want to get their lives back to some kind of normalcy. They've told us that with the war ongoing in other parts of the country, they're very worried that, the fighting could potentially return here to Irpin and other places around Kyiv.
What's happening with the war in Ukraine? A year's passed since Russia's invasion. Ukraine was able to push Russia out of places like the area around the capital Kyiv, so that the war is concentrated in the south and southeast. Recently, Russia suffered defeats like the surrender of Kherson in the south. It's been forced to call up 300,000 extra troops. In his State of the Nation address, Russia's President Putin said the West started the war, and Russia couldn't be defeated in battle. Estimates put the total military and civilian deaths on both sides at more than 40,000, whilst around 8 million Ukrainian refugees have fled across Europe. It's the largest movement of European refugees since the Second World War. It's thought that more than 140,000 buildings have been destroyed. Western countries have provided billions of dollars in aid, weapons and military training. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has made trips to the US, UK and Brussels as he tries to secure more support, and makes daily video addresses. Many Ukrainians have stopped speaking Russian, whilst Russian statues and street names have been removed or changed.
Абонент временно недоступен. Перезвоните позже. The subscriber is not available now. Please call back.
So I recently wrote an article about the rising sexual exploitation of Ukrainian women and girls as a result of the ongoing war in Ukraine. You can read the whole thing on my Substack if you want. And while doing my research for this piece, I came across a lot of the so-called mail-order bride websites offering Ukrainian women and essentially exploiting the fact that there is a war. And I want to share with you how absolutely fucking unhinged some of them are. So on one of them, which seems to be targeted mostly at American men, it says that now you can go to almost any European country and search for Ukrainian wife, since there is a lot of young ladies who left Ukraine because of the war or long before it and who are searching for a romantic relationship with a foreign man right now. Right, because witnessing all the death, destruction and chaos and then having to flee your home definitely puts one in the mood to get married to a random foreign man who's looking for vulnerable women. The next website, called mailbride.net, is quite literally using the fact that there is a war in Ukraine as a selling point for their services. As apparently there is more than 2,000 Ukrainian mail order brides waiting for you. Support the girls from Ukraine now, they need it. Save Ukrainian from war. I fucking hate this world sometimes. This last website at least doesn't mention the war in Ukraine, but their description of Ukrainian women is probably the worst I've seen so far. Here's what they wrote about them. No matter what age they are, Ukrainian brides were taught the need to be weaker. A single woman likes to be innocent, to feel that she's taken care of. She likes it when men pay attention to her. Honestly, out of all the different types of men out there, passport bros, who created a demand for this type of shit and services, are slightly above incels, but definitely below everyone else. Because it's precisely their existence that contributes to this disgusting fetishization, stereotyping, and exploitation of Ukrainian and Slavic women in general.
This used to be a city in Ukraine. Marinka is, or was, a city near Donetsk in the Donbass region of eastern Ukraine. It used to be home to around 10,000 people. It's been contested by Ukrainian forces and Russian-backed paramilitaries since war broke out in the region in 2014. But new photos and footage show that the city has been practically wiped off the map since Russia launched its full invasion of Ukraine last year. The city is completely destroyed, said Artem Shus, Marinka's police chief. Completely.
This week in the news, students in Ukraine started their school year in underground classrooms. The train stations in Kharkiv were repurposed as a way to hold classes during the war against Russia. Newly revealed documents show that companies like American Airlines are allowing their cabins to reach 90 degrees before it's considered too hot to board. Other airlines like JetBlue have set their limit to 85 degrees. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg says his department is taking action in extreme cases. Former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says she's planning to run for re-election in Congress, ending rumors about a possible retirement in 2024. At 83 years old, she's the latest politician to face questions about their age. And a U.S. judge ordered Texas to move their floating buoys from the middle of the Rio Grande. The barrier, which was designed to block migrants from crossing the border, will now need to be moved to the Texas side of the river by September 15th.
That moved NATO into the old Soviet sphere of influence, making NATO's border with Russia the longest it's ever been. Belarus, Ukraine, and Georgia were now the last post-Soviet countries left between Russia and NATO. But Ukraine and Georgia both wanted to join NATO for a long time, and that made them prime targets for Russia. Ukraine became a NATO partner in 1994, which brought them a step closer to becoming a member.
Україна буде в НАТО. Це історична подія для нашого народу.
And in 2013, they reached an association agreement with the European Union. But when it came time to sign the deal, Ukraine's pro-Russian government refused. Instead, they chose to strengthen ties with Russia. After the decision was announced, hundreds of thousands of protesters took to the streets to demand the agreement be signed.
Ukraina, Europa! Ukraina, Europa!
After months of peaceful protests, the Ukrainian president cracked down and killed more than 100 people, sparking more protests, which eventually drove the president out of office and the country. This meant Putin was losing political influence over Ukraine, so he decided to use force instead. First, he invaded and annexed Ukraine's Crimean Peninsula. Then, Russia-backed separatists captured the regions of Donetsk and Luhansk and declared them independent of Ukraine. Since then, Ukraine has been locked in a conflict with Russia that has killed 14,000 people and displaced nearly 2 million. For nearly 8 years, Putin has held on to these regions, destabilizing Ukraine and keeping it from moving closer to the West. But in November 2021, Putin decided to go all in. Satellite images showed at least 100,000 Russian troops and military equipment piling up along the border of Ukraine. Putin repeatedly denied any plans to invade, but weeks later, he presented his demands to the West. His main demand was that NATO stop expanding and move its military borders back to where they were in 1997.
Okay, why does Russia hate NATO? And what does NATO actually do? It stands for the North Atlantic Treaty Organisation, and it's made up of 28 countries in Europe, including the UK, France, Germany, Italy, and Turkey, as well as Canada and its biggest financial contributor, the US. Together, these countries form a political and military alliance, meaning if one member is attacked, the others will come to its defence. It came about after World War II to prevent the Soviet Union from expanding its borders into Europe. Russia and Ukraine aren't part of NATO, but there's a chance Ukraine could join the alliance in the future, and that aspiration is seen as a threat by Russia. Recently, Russia has been sending troops to the Ukraine border. NATO has also been increasing its military presence in member states. President Putin claims NATO are breaking a promise not to expand further east towards Russia. According to NATO, no promise was ever made, and it says its actions are completely necessary.
I want to show you what Ukraine looks like compared to earlier in the war. I'm Erin McLaughlin, and I'm on my 4th trip here to Ukraine in the last year for NBC News. My producers and I drive 8 hours from Poland to reach Kyiv. Most of the fighting is concentrated in the south and the east, so driving through the western part of the country is pretty peaceful. We stop for a famous Ukrainian gas station hot dog and coffee on the way.
You don't get these anywhere else in the world, as far as I know.
When we arrive, it's amazing to see how much the city has changed. This road used to be littered with the hallmarks of war. This was the view as I arrived shortly after the Russian retreat from the outskirts of the capital. Now there are signs of reconstruction. This apartment building was hit by a missile. Now it's completely repaired, and they're rebuilding homes in the nearby town of Bucha. It's hard to believe that 13 months ago, just before the war, I was able to fly to Kyiv. Little did I know how rare this view would eventually become.
These are guards on Ukraine's southern border with Romania. But this isn't them keeping enemies out. It's keeping their own people in. Since the Russian invasion, for any man who can fight and is under 60, it's illegal to leave the country without a valid exemption. The young men you saw in that video were arrested meters from Romania's border and could face up to 8 years in jail. Since the start of the war, over 4,000 men have been arrested while trying to cross this border. Elsewhere, the numbers are higher. This man was arrested in northern Moldova and taken to the local border police station. It's been 6 months since he's seen his family. He says he left Kyiv because he's struggling to survive.
Цены растут, и кушать хочется, работать надо, а и работы столько нету.
With no fighting experience, he hadn't been asked to take up arms yet.
В первую очередь пошли там те, что служили, и пошло-поехало. А мы, которые не служили, все просто ждем своего времени. Если нагнетать будет ситуация сильнее, всех уже и косых, и хромых будут брать.
Да, люди говорят, что это предательство, это...
Я не согласен, не все же воины. Не надо же всю страну тогда держать в заперти.
Ukrainian men running from the war have the right to claim asylum in neighboring countries. Yevgeny was able to claim asylum. He's one of 20,000 men granted asylum after crossing illegally to a neighboring country since the war began. We lost contact with Yevgeny after this. The BBC have found more than 40,000 people have tried to leave Ukraine or have already left illegally. Ukraine says the number of men leaving is having no effect on the war effort.
20 Days in Mariupol is the Oscar-nominated Ukrainian documentary about the atrocities Russia has committed in Mariupol. The filmmakers stayed in Mariupol in order to film Russian war crimes and show what was actually happening to people.
For those of you that don't know, no journalists, no organizations can get into Mariupol anymore, and we have no clue the amount of deaths. All we know from satellite images is that it's estimated that there are mass graves of 100,000. We also know that over 90% of the city infrastructure was destroyed by Russia. This documentary provides a first-hand insight experience of what people were and are continuing to go through. I really hope everybody watches this film. It's so important to know what is happening so that we can take action. For those of you in the Bay Area, Stanford is hosting a screening this Friday at 5:30. I hope you can make it. And for those of you in other places, check out the website of 20 Days in Mariupol to see where you can find a screening.
Do you remember this viral video? That's Valeria Shashenok in a bomb shelter. Millions of people watched her content about life in Ukraine after Russia's full-scale invasion. That was 2 years ago. Valeria ended up fleeing to Europe, but she's back in Ukraine now, trying to restart her life there. And what's life like in Kiev right now?
People are still trying to do their things, working, meet with friends, but on another side, people dying every day. So when I say that life is pretty normal now, it's not true. For example, today Kiev was bombed. People died today in the morning when I was sleeping.
There are attacks happening in the capital, but the heaviest fighting is in the east and south. So what's going on there? Well, for the last few months, there's been a kind of deadlock because neither side was able to push the other one back in a major way. But things have shifted recently, and it looks like Russia's heading into a third year of war with a slight advantage.
Both sides are suffering, but the Russians are suffering less.
Russian forces took the town of Avdiivka in mid-February. It's the first significant gain by either side for many months. Avdiivka's here on this 1,500-kilometer front line. Russia controls about 18% of Ukraine, and the fighting has turned into this high-intensity trench war.
Like in the First World War, something like that.
It takes hundreds of thousands of troops and a lot of weapons to sustain this kind of fighting, and that's where Ukraine in particular is struggling. Its soldiers are exhausted. Most of them have been fighting almost non-stop for the last 2 years. And there's a big debate happening in Ukraine about how to switch out those soldiers and who to replace them with.
It's really about the military draft, who is serving, who is not, what is just, what is not.
The other big problem for Ukraine right now is a shortage of weapons and ammunition. Ukraine's doing things like developing drone technology to help counter Russia's firepower. But overall, Ukraine relies really heavily on military aid from its Western allies, which they say isn't coming fast enough. Right now, there's a $61 billion aid package that's stuck in the US Congress. People are also wondering what'll happen if Donald Trump wins the election in November, because he's been skeptical about supporting Ukraine in the past.
We're spending $170 billion for faraway land.
Russia's had its problems too. But the experts we've spoken to say Russia has learned some lessons from the first years of war, and it seems to be in a better position now.
It's got more ammunition. It has the capacity to mobilize more soldiers. I think the Russians will, at the very least, push the Ukrainians back some way this year.
People are really tired. I'm very tired too. I want to stay here, but now I know that in every moment, maybe I need to run again.
31,000. That number is now trending on Twitter. And that's because during that meeting I mentioned in my previous video, a lot of the top brass from the Ukrainian armed forces, including Zelensky and really high-end, the defense ministers were asked a bunch of questions from the press. And someone asked Zelensky, how many deaths have there been so far on the Ukrainian side? Something that he has not publicly stated, something that's never been stated before. And that number is 31,000. And this is the pain in his face as he's saying that number. Because that is 31,000 that should have never happened. That is Russia killing and attacking innocent Ukrainians, and then Ukraine having to stand up for itself against Russia's aggression. That had cost them 31,000 Ukrainian lives, which should have never happened. And you can tell that he is visibly angry and upset that that number even exists, because Russia should have never done this. They should have stopped, and 2014 should have never happened. And that number from 2014 is even higher, since that's going 10 years. So imagine how many that could be. That 31,000 represents husbands, represents sons, fathers, my friends that have been killed because Russia decided they just wanted more territory. This is 2024. This should never happen. There should never be another country who states, I want that territory, let's go ahead and invade them. It's 2024. That should never happen. And the worst part is, you've got countries like the United States who are too busy worrying about their own politics and playing with each other that they refuse to even put said bill on the floor. And yes, we're talking about Michael Johnson, aka Michael Putin. You have dicks like that who love to play around with politics, that for every day that they're waiting to put a bill on the floor, which is going to pass if they put the bill on the floor, there's going to be hundreds and hundreds of more Ukrainians dead because of their actions. And mark my word, when it comes time to write this history book, Putin's going to be up there, Prigozhin, Lukashenko, and Mike Johnson. If you're in the United States, you need to reach out to your congressmen, congresswomen, right there in the House and say, demand that Johnson puts that bill on the floor and get everyone to vote yes on it. It is because of the United States that Avdiivka fell. It is because of the United States not providing equipment sooner when Russia started their invasion that 31,000 Ukrainians are now dead. Regardless if you are a Republican or a Democrat, this should make you angry. Because in America, we have that whole sense of strength. We could take down any enemy. Well, so far, we've failed in that in Russia's invasion of Ukraine. We allowed it to happen. And every day that we don't support Ukraine and help them out, we're showing our weakness. And Americans, we're not weak. We need to step up and do what's right.
Yes, the UK has stated that we are in pre-war times. Here's everything you need to know. First off, a senior military chief for NATO, or the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, stated that Europe needs to be on alert and to expect the unexpected. Now, on top of that, the head of the NATO Military Committee stated that the public needs to change their mindset for an era where anything can happen at any time. I feel like I didn't expect 2024 to be that kind of era, but okay. Also, Germany's defense minister stated that Russia will most likely attack in the next 5 to 8 years. Thanks, Boris, for that very helpful information. As Sweden attempts to join NATO, they are also stating that they are preparing for war. And so far, the UK has stated that they are opposed to conscription, which is a fancy word for a mandatory draft. But they are urging British citizens to prepare for a mass mobilization of tens of thousands of people and a citizen army. Do we know what a citizen army is? Not really. I don't think they do either, but it's not going to be a conscription. It's not going to be a draft, apparently. I have a feeling what they mean by a citizen army is similar to what's happening in Ukraine. It's just people fighting back when people are on their land. That's my guess. I don't know. On top of that, within the next 3 years, the UK is trying to increase their military to about 120,000 people. Right now, I see that they're about 70,000 people. And it seems like the UK is mainly focused on Russia. They've even stated, like, outright that Ukrainian bravery has held Russia back a little bit, but they expect Russia to move forward to NATO countries, which is kind of crazy. Like, do you know what's happening to Ukrainian citizens right now and you're just so terrified for yourself? Like, why aren't you helping them with this military that you have? I don't know. But outside of Russia, they have also talked about China, Iran, and North Korea as countries that they're worried about because of ties between them and Russia. Overall, this does seem like a bit of a long game, but as far as the UK and Sweden and NATO countries are concerned, I guess we're in pre-war times. And as far as the US, we are so unbelievably focused on Israel and Yemen that we haven't really had much come out regarding all of this, but I'm sure we'll see more in the future. And don't worry, I'll cover that too.
Russia warns it could accidentally start a nuclear war as impotent Western leaders miscalculate the risk of World War III.
Russia has fired a new hypersonic missile on Ukraine for the first time, experts say. The Zircon missile can reportedly reach Mach 9 speeds, nearly 7,000 miles an hour. If that's true, it's the fastest in the world and nearly impossible to shoot down. Ukrainian scientists say they have video evidence linking a strike on Kyiv earlier in February to a 3M22 Zircon missile. 5 people died in Russian attacks that day, though it's not clear if any were linked directly to the missile. Russia has previously admitted using other hypersonic weapons in Ukraine, including the Kinzhal missile in March last year.
you remember last year during the Ukraine invasion when that one reporter kind of just, let me just find it for you.
European, I have to choose those words carefully too, city where you wouldn't expect that or hope that it's going to happen.
Okay, I think you get the idea. He's right about the fact that white people found it more tragic that a white country was being invaded rather than a non-white country. So keep that in mind, but this video is about attractiveness. Attractiveness is associated with being a good person, and unattractiveness is associated with being a bad person. You can see that trend in most of our popular hero-villain archetypes. People's brains generally feel like an injustice is happening when a bad thing happens to a pretty person because it is assumed that a bad thing is happening to a good person. That is less the case when a bad thing is happening to a less attractive person because it feels like a bad thing is happening to a bad person. And for some people, it feels like justice is being served when a bad thing happens to a less attractive person. Now, if we stop talking about attractiveness and we apply this to race and religion, you can see the exact same thing. The reason white people saw the invasion of Ukraine as a bigger injustice than the invasion of non-white countries is because they saw a bigger injustice happening because they saw a bad thing happening to good people.
For me, I really like corn.
What do you like about corn?
It's corn! A good corn with knobs. It has the juice. I can't imagine a more beautiful thing. It's corn! I can tell you all about it. I mean, look at this thing.
Because when you're from a black or brown country, the United States would be like, oh, good luck. The issue is not the 100,000 Ukrainian refugees being allowed to enter the United States. The issue is how you get treated differently depending on whether you got the complexion for the protection or you don't. Did you know that there is a cap on the number of refugees that the United States may enter per year? The current cap is at 125,000. The previous cap was only 62,500, and the previous cap before that one was only 15,000. 15,000 cap was set by the Trump administration, baby. You already know. This is so sick and fucking twisted! Sick and twisted!
People first, Indian people, Arabic people, before black people. As long as you're black, no one likes you.
We went to the train station and they will not let us in. And when they did let us in, they were like, you have to give us money because this is not for free for you because you are foreign. This is not free for you. You have to pay for it. Maybe it's a war. Maybe people start feeling stressed. They want their people to get first. Of course, everyone wants their people to be safe. So they had to express that in a way.
This is my evening routine living in Kyiv, Ukraine. I return home from work somewhere between 7 and 9 p.m. I have dinner while catching up on the news that I missed during the day. Sometimes news are good, and sometimes they ruin my appetite. I really should stop doing this. Afterward, I wash away the day's stress. Unfortunately, I cannot wash away the fact that my home has been bombed for over 600 days. Take a moment to be grateful for the fact that we still have hot water and heating. Finally, bed. I quickly check for potential future air raids. Looking good. Maybe it'll be a quiet night. Nope. Here it goes again. The siren used to terrify me, but now I'm just angry. I check statements from officials and monitoring groups on Telegram to see what's happening. Thankfully, Ukrainians are some of the most innovative people in the world, so there's almost immediate information on the reason for the air raid. Warm clothes on, grab a bag I've prepared exactly for this reason, and head out. Since my building doesn't have a bomb shelter, I have to make my way to the nearest metro station. We recently had almost 3 weeks without air raids. It's crazy that I get excited about such a thing. Metro in Kyiv is beautiful. I've always liked it. I'm just getting pretty tired of spending my time here. I miss the days when I used to take metro just for transport. You might try and get some sleep while waiting. It's often impossible to fall asleep because there's a threat of an attack, and no matter how much you want to sleep, there's just part of you that will not let you relax.
The air alert is over. May the force be with you.
It's now early morning, the night is over, and you go back home and get ready for another day.
Life could be worse. No, not really. This is the worst.
This is the worst.
This is the worst.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyway.
I'm gonna lose a lot of followers because of this, but while I still have this platform, I truly want to use it for something I believe in. And George Orwell once said that journalism is printing something nobody else wants printed, and everything else is just public relations. That's why, as a Ukrainian, I don't want to stay neutral when it comes to Israel and Palestine, because I remember how frustrated I was when people tried to stay neutral when my country was the one who was suffering. And my country is currently supporting Israel. And don't get me wrong, I'm extremely heartbroken and I cannot imagine the sufferings innocent Israelis are going through today. But let's not forget that Palestinians have been going through this for decades. And people were not there for them. And the media was not covering this. And going back to George Orwell, let's talk about Newspeak. Because the way media is presenting information to us today is absolutely insane. When something happens to Israelis, the word which is being used is killed. But when the same is happening to Palestinians, the word which is being used is dead. And the way we see information is the way how we start thinking about it. And I'm not going to pretend that I understand everything about what is happening in Israel and Palestine, because the history is so extremely complex. But I encourage you to understand the source from where you get in the news and what benefit and what role they play in this conflict. I ask Israelis and Palestinians to please help us to educate ourselves. What type of books do you recommend? What type of media do you recommend? Please help us to help each other. I'm so heartbroken for everybody who's involved in this, because I, unfortunately, personally know that there are no winners at war. But we cannot completely disregard one side and pretend that this is normal, because this is anything but fucking normal.
Мене звуть Юля, мені 24 роки. Я волонтер, мисткиня.
Я просто стояла, дивилась на цю сцену і згадувала, як колись я стояла на сцені, танцювала, намагалась уявити, як люди танцювали на тій сцені колись, до того, як її розтрощили.
Якщо я займаюся хореографією, якщо в мене є талановиті люди в оточенні, то як ми можемо це класно використати, що ми можемо з цього, що буде, скажімо так, працювати умовно на культурному фронті.
Початку повномасштабного вторгнення я мала сміливість мріяти, мала радість мріяти, але, мабуть, не уявляла все ж таки, як воно буде. І ніколи, звісно, що в житті я не могла б собі уявити, що, проживаючи війну, я буду одночасно з цим проживати якісь найяскравіші, найщасливіші моменти свого життя.
It is not uncommon for Ukrainians to refer to African Americans as N-word. Volunteer of color may be called a monkey or may see children games with blackface. Being aware of the history of dehumanization for people of African descent may help inform where this comes from. It is not justified. It will be at your discretion to determine the intent, nor the matter of the intent. Staff recognizes the impact that hearing the word may invoke hurt and anger. This is literally in the Peace Corps disclaimer for the possible considerations for African Americans and other black volunteers. It's rather off-putting, to say the least, that advocating for your humanity comes with a disclaimer for how you disrespect minds. That's cold, right? And then the paternalistic nature of the Peace Corps to try to tell us how we should feel about it or try to coach us into how we should perceive it. Man, don't disrespect us or insult our intelligence. The Peace Corps went on to say, if you view it as unlearned, something the person has never been exposed to, it may be an opportunity for you to educate that person. We are here to support successful service, and these comments and images can be a huge distraction and obstacle to you. Know that the Peace Corps staff is here to support and encourage you. Do not hesitate to remove yourself from such situations. You are not expected to be subjected to such treatment. You can also find support and understand other African-American Peace Corps volunteers serving in the Ukraine. Then I went to Peace Corps' website and look what I see on the homepage, man. It made me think. So you can use our bodies to advocate for Ukrainian peace, but it comes at the expense of a little bit of anti-blackness, huh? This is on their website as possible considerations for African Americans or black volunteers.
Did you feel then, or at other stages, that you could lose your own life?
That was one of the most terrifying moments of my life. And I went through 6 wars. So Mariupol was the most difficult experience morally and from the point of view just survival. But that specific moment, yeah, that was really scary. But at the same time, this is the first time, and I've never seen anything like this. This is the first time when we were actually able to film the proof that Russian army shoots at the residential buildings. And that's a very valuable moment.
Which they deny, of course.
Usually you see the consequences of the strike, and this always can be questioned, saying, well, you're not a ballistic expert, you don't know what that shell was or where it was coming from. And here we have on camera the tank with the letter Z that shoots at the residential building. Now we even know the name of the driver of that tank. We know that he killed 2 people in that specific moment.
In that particular moment there, that's all.
In that particular moment, an elderly couple dies.
It's a lovely day today, so whatever you've got to do, you've got a lovely day to do it in, that's true. And I hope whatever you've got to do is something that can be done by 2, for I'd really like to.
I'm fucking pissed. I am fucking pissed that Russia continues its genocidal campaign against Ukrainians. I am fucking pissed that there's people in the world who support them and believe that they're somehow justified to invade and destroy Ukraine because of the very lies that Russia has told. In spite of Russia directly violating the 1994 Budapest Memorandum that they themselves fucking signed to defend Ukraine's sovereignty along with the US and the UK in exchange for Ukraine surrendering its nuclear arsenal to Russia itself. I'm even more fucking pissed at the apathetic world leaders who do jack shit, hand-wring, play politics, and drag their feet about supplying Ukraine with the tools it needs to win. I'm not just talking about holding off Russia's advances indefinitely, but winning. Ukraine winning. Nobody except Russia wants this war to carry on indefinitely. No supporter of Ukraine wants to see this war last longer than it needs to for Ukraine to take back all of its territory from the Russians. The feeling of just fucking helpless rage that I feel every fucking mass rocket attack had started to fade for me a little bit because, it had been a while since we'd had one this large. But god damn, it came back so quickly, and it's not showing any signs of leaving. Talking to people that I know and care about inside Ukraine during one of these attacks, uncertain if they're going to survive, is one of the most stressful but most important situations that I have put myself in over and over since this fucking Russian invasion started. The amount of times that I have talked to friends, be it text or video chat, during these attacks it's more than I can count. I don't even know. And there is no guarantee that things will work out and be fine every single attack. We've seen that they're not for everybody. And we're at the 2-year mark from when, the whispers of a possible Russian invasion were starting to really stir back in 2021. We're nearing 2 years of these evil, evil actions by the Russian Federation, 2 years of occupation of part of Kherson and Zaporizhia, 10 years of occupation of Crimea and of Donetsk and Luhansk, 2 years of full-scale missile strikes against Ukrainian cities far from the battlefield for no goddamn reason other than to cause fear and pain. It's terrorism what Russia did in Bucha, it's terrorism what they did in Izum. The amount of war crimes that Russia has committed is staggering. We're well over 100,000 war crimes that have been documented in less than 2 fucking years. That's over 140 per day, assuming that they were all documented. And we know that not all war crimes get reported and documented. So try and wrap your fucking mind around the scale of this and the fact that people side with these motherfuckers. I genuinely will never understand the brain rot that makes anyone support a nation whose standard operating procedure is to attack civilians and burn cities to the ground and call it liberation. Slava Ukraini.
Foreigners in that this is not our war. We need to leave this place. What I saw, like, if you saw what I saw, you know that us, any single minute, every single second we spend here is a danger to the life of every single one of us. Great Nigerian students. Great. What do we want?
We want to go.
What do we want?
We want to go.
What do we want?
We want to go. Only them for them to be sent back by Ukrainian soldiers, by Russian soldiers. I don't know why they want us here. But this is not our war. We have nothing to do with this. They should let us go home. We want to go home. No one's come in to do anything. No one's created a humanitarian corridor. If people are leaving, they're leaving on their own, by their own devices, by things they could do.
And we are not at the border, we are not in Poland, we are not anywhere. We are in Subi. Yeah. And we are stuck in Subi.
Yes.
This is the...
You say what Russian ambassador said, bro?
Say the whole don't mess up. You know,
It made me appreciate white people because only they think of stupid shit like this.
So how come are Ukrainian refugees still coming to Europe if so many cities in Ukraine are not ruined and the war is not everywhere? Why are they going on holidays to Europe? Have you seen their suitcases? They look rich. Ukraine is the largest country in Europe if we don't count Russia, and we obviously don't. For a plethora of reasons. Yet, cities like Lviv, Ternopil, Ivano-Frankivsk, and others in the west of Ukraine are still in the range of Russian artillery, thanks to our lovely neighbors, Belarus. And they have missiles strike them all the time. For instance, the most recent airstrike on Lviv was today. Refugees from cities that have been fully leveled, or those that escaped occupied territories or left deoccupied territories, are severely traumatized and have PTSD. No Ukrainian city is safe for them to recover because all Ukrainian cities get hit with missiles. That only triggers the PTSD. So they need to go west. 2. Due to the destruction of entire Ukrainian cities, thousands of homes have been ruined. Ukraine simply does not have the capacity on a short notice to accommodate as many people as constantly need housing. 3. It's about jobs. You know, those warehouses, movie theaters, grocery stores, shopping malls, storage facilities, offices, dental studios, hospitals. Those places that were ruined, they are someone's job sites that no longer exist, so they don't have a job. So they go west to look for the job, and God forbid you start yelling, oh my god, they're taking our jobs. You weren't gonna clean movie theater toilets with a doctor's degree anyway, so don't even start. Spare me. Stop it. And 4th and final one, my favorite. Ukrainians vacation in Europe. What kind of issue do you have with that? That helps your economy. Why wouldn't Ukrainians escape to Europe for a week or two to have a moment of silence, safety, security, and simply to forget that they live in a war zone? If you were living under the threat of constant shelling and you had an ability to escape that for a week or two, would you not? You would. And then the thing about suitcases and Ukrainians not looking like refugees. Ukrainians are refugees and we look like refugees, it's just your idea of a refugee is skewed. Ukrainians are not running from poverty, they're running from missiles. Yeah, people have BMWs and Rimowa suitcases, and sometimes even Louis Vuitton duffel bags. That doesn't make them not refugees. We have other nice too, you know? Because our level of life before war was very decent. For instance, if you live in a neighborhood that gets shelled constantly, you're gonna pack the bags that you have and you're gonna get in your BMW and you're gonna run because it doesn't matter how rich you are, your home is about to get destroyed. And those rich Ukrainians today don't have their homes and spend most of their salaries and savings on the Ukrainian military. If you were evacuating from a war zone, would you put everything you need in a sheet and leave like that, or would you pack the bag that you already own? Yeah, you'd pack a bag that you already own. You don't have to be destitute to suffer from war. You don't have to look homeless to be homeless from war. Circumstances change. Instead of asking yourselves how a Ukrainian person can afford a suitcase, ask Google, how do I repeat middle school at age of X? Seriously. Would I be able to afford any of these nice things now? No.
So we the blacks in Ukraine have entered Romania, and we are in the train station right now to board a train to the capital to board a flight to Ghana, and then others going to Nigeria, Zimbabwe. So this is where we are right now. These are the Africans. We are all safe. Romania has been so good to us. They've accommodated us, gave us food and everything. We've not spent even $1 in Romania because they've taken care of us, everything. So yes, please say thank you to Romania.
This is the last couple of weeks of the Russian invasion of Ukraine if it was a TV show. Like, that's how I'm going to explain it to you, okay? So the first thing you need to know is, like, last week, right? A drone hit the Kremlin, all right? The Kremlin is the Russian version of the White House, right? And a drone flew up right next to a flagpole on the Kremlin and exploded and burned a Russian flag on their version of the White House. And the first thing the Russians did is they tried denying it, and then everyone was like, dude, we have the video. And then they're like, oh yeah, well, we shot that drone down. And then people watching the video are like, dude, you did not shoot that drone down. You clearly don't have air defenses. That shit reached its destination, and then somebody hit a button and it went pop and burned your flag. And then the Russians like, whoever did this, listen, y'all, we got nukes. We'll nuke the world. And the entire world looked at the Russians and said, if you would have, you could have. Like, you would have already done it. So shut up. So then the Russians, right, they're just like, shit isn't going well. They're losing troops left and right. They have this mercenary group called Wagner that is run by a crazy person, right? And what this dude does is he goes and he hires prisoners from Russian prisons out in the middle of nowhere, like their version of Ohio, right? And he takes these people and he brings them to Ukraine and he sends wave after wave of them at the Ukrainians, and they just get mowed down. And this dude keeps losing battles left and right, but here's what his favorite thing to do is, right? He likes to make unhinged videos blaming everyone else but himself for it. He blames the government. He blames the military. He's standing in front of dead bodies going like, this is because they didn't send me enough ammo. This is because of that stupid old man. And everyone's like, yo, who's he talking about, stupid old man? And people are like, yo, is he talking about Putin? And then at one point, this dude said, I'm about to pull out of Ukraine and maybe I'll come to Moscow. And like everyone lost their mind then. Everyone was like, yo, what the hell is going on right now, right? Which brings me to yesterday. So you know how in America, like, we don't have good social services because we spent all of that shit on like war and planes and missiles? The reason that happened is because for the last 70 years, the Russians have this big scary parade every year. And it's this big scary parade where they have all their troops march down the street. They got all their tanks. They got all their missiles. They got the helicopters flying over. And like U.S. congressmen see this and they're like, we need to go get more money to Raytheon, like right away. This year though, the Russians, like they had their big parade, right? First thing, they had less troops than they've ever had in the history of this fucking parade. Like they held this parade during World War II and they had more troops because they walked right from the parade into battle. They had like 11,000 troops. Almost all of them were literal kids. Like they couldn't even grow a beard. But this is the funniest part. Instead of having 30, 40 tanks, you know what they had? They had a tank, a single tank. They didn't have enough tanks. And because of that, the Ukrainians today posted a video of all these burned out shells of Russian tanks that Ukrainian tractors have dragged to their own capital. And in the video, they said, hey, Russia, if you need to find any of your tanks, we have them here.
Let's make Ukraine's national dish. This is borscht. The world is going through a lot right now, and it's important for us to do our best in helping the people who are affected by this terrible war. I come from Romania, an Eastern European country that shares 2 borders with Ukraine, and the proximity of this situation makes it feel that much more shocking to me. I'm making this video to raise awareness to ways we can help. And the best way to do that right now is by donating to a reputable charity. I donated to the Come Back Alive Foundation. They ensure soldiers and volunteers in Ukraine have proper healthcare and enough supplies to fight back. And you can do so as well by going to the link in my bio. Borscht is a dish filled with history, and it's shared by Ukrainians and Russians. And I made it in hopes that this will be over soon. Stay safe and donate.
Here are some ways that you can support the African and Caribbean students who are stranded in Ukraine and are being stopped from leaving the border because of their race. First of all, there are a bunch of funds that have been set up that you can donate to without having to go through an NGO. I'll link to this one below. Afro Rainbow Austria are an organisation that are providing resources for queer Africans who are stuck out there. Please check out this incredible Twitter thread by Corinne Sky that shows different resources. It has contact information for different embassies so that stranded students can know who to reach out to. And there's a link to this amazing WhatsApp group that they've created so that people can share information directly with each other. All information linked below.
This is the most richest and complete Ramadan in recent years. What I've missed most about Ramadan last year, I miss everything. I miss collective prayers, iftars, Tarawih namaz, lessons, lectures, everything. We are like one big family here, and every year we look forward to Ramadan because it is our favorite time of the year. Last year, many people lost their homes and were forced to move to other cities or abroad. Some fathers, sons and brothers went to fight in the war and are still fighting. There were very few people in the mosque at the beginning of Ramadan because it was a strict curfew and it was impossible for people to leave their homes, and many of them were afraid. The beginning was the most terrible period in our lives. In general, the war shattered my idea of the future. We work, we study, we do our routine things, but air raid alert can sound almost every day, sometimes several times a day. This year, Ramadan passing very warmly. Many people come to the mosque, many families have returned to Kyiv. It is a big blessing for us that we can be together. It is a feeling of home now. I think that it gives us hope for a brighter future for us.